Good morning and welcome to this reflection for Monday, the 18th of January. My name is Caroline, and this morning we will be looking at 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 1 to 11. If you'd like to pause the video at this point and read this passage in your own Bibles, please do. We read in chapter 5 that Paul was teaching this new church in Corinth how to deal with the big problems of sexual immorality. But in chapter 6, which we're reading this morning, Paul is keen to teach this new congregation in Corinth how to deal with disputes. It was made up of Jews and Greeks who had come to know Christ as Lord. Paul knew this church and he knew these people. The Greeks had come from a background of philosophy and debate, and they held it very close to their heart, their right to discuss and debate. So disputes were organised and argued in the courts. And Paul is saying to this congregation, this is not the way Christians behave. We sort this out among ourselves. We don't wash our dirty laundry in public. I think it's really important to understand the background of this passage because it can make very hard reading for us today. Paul had preached Christ and him crucified to these people in this church, and he was hearing that they had not been able to continue that way of life. He had heard from various people who had written to him and reported what was going on, that the world was creeping in to the way this church was managed. Paul wanted to remind this group of Christians that actually if their rights are what they hang on to and they lose track of their responsibilities, then things will really go awry, and they only come back together when there is true repentance. He is not suggesting that people who make mistakes have no way back to Christ, but he wants them to understand that continual bickering and legal argument is not what Christ died on the cross for. He is very keen to help this new congregation to live the life that Jesus died for. We know from the Sermon on the Mount that the peacemakers are blessed. And Paul wants this congregation to live the life that Jesus has called them to live. The second half of this chapter will be covered by Andrew tomorrow. This is hard reading for us in this part of the world, in this stage. But one of the commentaries I read suggested this, that the combination of asserting rights and passing judgment on everyone else is one of the most insidious tendencies in the Church of God. Both these evils should have been transcended through the redemption which is ours in Jesus Christ. Rights have given way to reconciliation and mutual responsibility. Passing judgment was buried with Christ as one of the most destructive and loathsome characteristics of our unredeemed lower nature. Whatever Paul preached at Corinth about Jesus Christ and him crucified, these two cardinal lessons simply do not seem to have been received by this congregation. The same litigious spirit has often pervaded the church in the 21st century. So this morning I want to encourage us to pray for peace. Peace among ourselves as a church, among our family members, in our nation and throughout the world.